Hi guys, so today's video is going to be just a little bit of a general overview of two of the Cosmere board games that I have played and very much enjoyed. For anybody else that's like, I'm not a big enough nerd just by liking these books, I gotta also play board games for them. For those of you who are unfamiliar, the Cosmere is Brandon Sanderson's shared universe for his adult fantasy works, and no, you do not need to have read those in order to play these games. There are some really fun tie-ins, but I have played these games with people who have not read the books before, and they still had a really good time with it. It's just kind of like, you feel like that person that's like, well, in the books, it's really cool because, and you know all the fun stuff, and nobody else cares, they just want to play the game. The two specific games I'm going to be talking about would be Mistborn House War and the Call to Adventure Stormlight Archive Edition. I'm going to start with Mistborn House War. This is not going to be an in-depth how to play video. I will give you an overview of how to play, but they come with instructions, and most of you who watch my videos read, so I trust that you can read the directions better than I can try to explain them, because the instructions at least will be brief and specific. So, Mistborn House War, I think that if you like party games and you like playing games with more than just you and one other person, Mistborn House War is such a good time for that. The way this game works is you have the good guys of the books. They are actually the adversary in the game, and you don't want them to end up taking down the current political system. So you actually play as the noble houses who are the bad guys in the book. I thought that was a really interesting decision for the game. So you play as these noble houses, and each person is one of the noble houses, and then you have certain resources that you can trade with other people, and these different resources end up counteracting some of the cards that show up in the game. So each turn there's a card, and you have to kind of fight against that card, and if it gets to a certain point, then you're starting to lose a little bit. And the noble houses in this game serve the ultimate bad guy, the Lord Ruler. And there's two different ways this game can end. So there's different ways that you can win. It's a cooperative game, but it's cooperative and manipulative at the same time because there is an ultimate winner in the end. So while you have to work together, you also are kind of like, but am I going to play you a little bit? Which I love games like that. So this one is great for that. You can be sneaky, and it also, the end goal of who is the winner plays into this perfectly, because if you as a group lose to the good guys, then whoever had the least amount of favor throughout the game with the ultimate bad guy, that person will be the winner because they're the most likely conceptually to be forgiven by the good guys, if you will. And then in that instance, whoever had the most favor is like the ultimate loser. But on the flip side, if you defeat the good guys, then the noble houses stay, and whoever had the most favor with the Lord Ruler is the person who's the ultimate winner. So while you're playing, you might have certain cards that actually will screw everyone over. So you're trying to act like you are totally on board with what everyone's doing. You're making all these deals with them while you're playing, but then you actually secretly are going to try to burn it all to the ground in the end. It's so fun to see who can be the sneakiest, and there is some flexibility in this game. So when you need to trade resources and things like that, you don't have any parameters really. You have as much flexibility as you want. The instructions even encourage this. So you can make a deal with somebody and say, if you give me your ATM, then I will do the laundry for the whole week. You can do things like that, and if somebody's like, all right, I accept that deal, and then somebody else will be off to the side like, are you serious? No. And then it's so fun to see the way people get frustrated at the deals. But I absolutely love that there are some cards that let you go back on deals. You can't just go back on deals willy-nilly, but some cards will let you back out of a deal. So you also have to wonder, is the person making a deal that they're going to hold their end of the bargain for, or the card's not going to allow them to do that, or will allow them to do that? It's so fun. It's a lot of scheming. It's a lot of playing against other people. But as you can imagine, the downside, if you will, of this game is if you are somebody who lives maybe with one other person, or you don't have the opportunity to play games, you don't have consistent game nights, things like that, then this one's not going to be as used for you and your family, because you do have to have at least 3 players. But ultimately, I would say 4 is the ideal number. It says play 3 to 5, but I've played 4, and I thought that was a great number. You can't really do 2, and then 3 is just, in my opinion, not quite enough, and it's hard to get 5 different people together unless you have a big family or something. But obviously, given the time that I'm filming this, where it's still like not great for people to go out and socialize, I think it's even harder to have bigger groups of people. But if you have some family and close friends who you do get to interact with, this game is so much fun. Highly recommend. Also, a little fun tidbit for those of you who are fans of the books. What's cool is that the resources from the different houses, the different noble houses, kind of align with the very subtle resources that are mentioned for the noble houses in the books. Now on to the Stormlight Archive Call to Adventure game, which, just one little thing I have to mention. The box itself and the presentation of this is absolutely gorgeous, and the artwork on the cards is stunning. I actually follow a lot of the artists on Instagram, so it was so cool to get to see the artwork before the game was even out. I got to see a lot of it, not like special treatment. I followed the artists on Instagram, and I was like, oh, that's so cool. It's like, I've chatted with a few of them in DMs before too, and it almost feels like when you find out someone who you went to school with has like gone on to do great things, and you're like, wow, good for them. But anyway, on to the game. I want to display it a little bit nicer, but it's also quite full, and I'm afraid if I tip it, then pieces will fall out. So I'm so sorry that the way I'm displaying it right now is not ideal, but nobody probably cares about that. This is a game that you can play with 2 people, and you can also play against one another or co-op, which I really like. I like that it's versatile in that way, but you can also play with more than 2 people. So for that reason, if you are someone like me, who's pretty much just me and my husband most of the time, this is the game that's probably going to get more use for you. That said, this is a game that is going to be a little bit more luck-based, because while you don't have typical die, you do have runes that you kind of cast your runes, and depending on the symbols that come up on your runes, you either advance or don't advance depending on how many of a certain amount of points you gain from certain symbols. You need a certain amount to be able to get past certain cards, so you kind of go up against certain cards, and then if you get the right rune casting or better than that, then you can kind of go past that card, and then once you have that card, you then become more powerful as an individual. This is important too because you want to decide exactly which cards you personally want to go up against, because the powers that you get by gaining those cards, you want to match those fairly well with the other cards you have. If you're too sporadic, you ruin your chances for the end of the game, because at the end, you kind of want to go up against the ultimate bad guy. Just like with Mistborn House War, you don't have to have read the books, but there are definitely going to be a lot of scenes depicted on the cards. The artwork on the cards is phenomenal. But some of them, if you know the scenes, you know it's on those cards. If you don't know, then you just don't know. But if you're in the middle of reading it, you might be able to be like, wait a second, is that so-and-so? And are they killing someone that also, are they killing that person? So you might not want to play it while you're reading the books. You probably can play it if you haven't read it, because then it's not going to mean anything to you. Or after you've read it. But if you're in the middle, you're going to recognize some people. And I wouldn't say it outright spoils things, but kinda. This one does rely, I would say, a little bit more on some luck, because even if you're like, okay, my chances of casting the runes in order to get a certain amount of points, like, I got this, and then sometimes you kind of toss the runes, and then you just get the worst possible outcome, and you're like, well, that was ridiculous, and then now you have a setback, and any setback during the game affects a lot of times what happens at the very end. It makes the ultimate bad guy even harder, so you really gotta make sure you're comfortable going against what you're going against. But then sometimes luck just works against you. So that's one thing about this game. It's kind of like if you're playing, I don't know, Yahtzee, and you're like, I've got really good chances of getting the number I need. And then you roll the die, and then you just get the one thing you didn't need, and you're like, are you serious? So you do have that factor in this game. Some people hate any kind of luck in games. This one does have some luck, but I also think that it can make it kind of fun, because then Does anybody else feel like sometimes when there's a little bit of luck involved, then you don't just get to blame your own intelligence, because then if you lose, you're like, I just had bad luck. Whereas if you lose when you're trying to be sneaky, like in Mistborn House War, you're like, dang it, I wasn't clever enough. So for your own self-esteem, this one might be the better option. In my opinion, this is also a game that you can get through relatively quickly. And that's fun, you know, you can play, and the first game maybe will be 15 minutes or so, and then you can play another game. So you can play a few games in a certain amount of time, where Mistborn House War, sometimes the game might be shorter depending on what cards show up that the good guys are fighting against you. And if there's a certain one that comes up, it's like, all right, game's almost over. But chances are the Mistborn House War game is going to last a little bit longer, and this one you're going to have shorter games. And I do think that the amount of cards don't have the most variety necessarily, but from what I understand, similar to if you've played the game Dominion, I believe you can combine this with other Call to Adventure games, of which I'm pretty sure they have a Name of the Wind one. I think they have another book-ish one, but then I think they have a generic, this is Call to Adventure, the basic one, and I think you can combine that. The experience is going to be a little bit more flavorful that way, but I love both of these games. If you are somebody who enjoys board games, I think you're going to really enjoy both of these. I think that they have totally different styles of game play, so you're going to get a lot out of both. I would highly recommend them. I have enjoyed them so much, and if you've played them, let me know what you think of them, and if you've played both, let me know which one you personally like more. Thanks so much for watching. If I can find links to these, I will leave them in the description bar down below. But anyway, I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. If you're interested in seeing more Cosmere content, Stormlight Archive content, all that stuff, I'll have my playlists linked. Have a great rest of your day though, and I'll see you all later. Bye.